Best of luck. This looks interesting.
Welcome to our first breakout session. Each individual that's presenting is allowed a total of 20 minutes, including any questions. And if the time runs long, I'll stop you, okay? But we have to stay on schedule. Our first presenter is Andrew Brewster. The title of his presentation is Correlating Standardized Test Scores, Academic Success and Failure to Socioeconomic Status.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Andrew Brewster. Before I begin, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone in the Education Department, my mentor, Dr. Box, and one of the assistants in the Education Department, Ms. Weird, and how much they've helped me just in my time here, regardless of this presentation. As we begin with talking about the correlation between socioeconomic status, the social status pertaining to wealth of an individual, of a household, of a school, of a community, and then how that affects the students. We're going to talk about some of the background information and what we need to understand about our past and kind of where our educational program and system has started and where it's come from. And really being frank and trying not to step on anybody's toes, we need to understand that there are some stigmas and biases we need to address. But before that, basic information. Socioeconomic status will be abbreviated to SES. I may slide in and out of that. The American Psychological Association has a great website, collects a lot of different data from different research projects from different researchers, and it's just a great, I have a lot of research from the governments of the United Kingdom and Australia that has been a big help to me, and they really have put a lot of money from their government into researching the effects of socioeconomic status on the student. And then Arkansas is simply a reference to all of the research that I also have from the U.S. was conducted in Arkansas. That's the location which it took place. There are a couple of different universities that conducted research there. This picture right here is a picture of the Little Rock Nine. For anyone who paid attention to history class, you'll remember the Little Rock crisis, and they were the first African-American students to attend an all-white school. And this really ties into those old biases and stigmas facing education, and that without blaming anybody, without pointing any fingers, we need to understand that we have a history of this country of viewing people based upon their race and not simply who they are. And obviously now today we know that there are no differences in intelligences between Anglo students and minority students. That's ridiculous. We all can agree upon that now. We need to understand that it's in our background, and that those stigmas and biases affect students, affect them in testing, in the classroom. Some of those are factual, it will actually impact their grades, and some of them is just how they're viewed, how they view themselves. It has a negative impact on their performance in the classroom, and that's something that exists today. We need to make sure we work to prevent from being something that continues. My purpose and interest in writing this paper and giving this presentation today is really, as a future educator, hopeful educator, I want to help students. So that's the overarching theme, is that's what I want to do, and I hope that by informing educators and parents and members of the community, this will move forward that goal of helping students and creating a friendlier educational environment, just creating classrooms free of bias, environments free of bias for students to study in and improve in, because there are so many other struggles they face, as we'll look into based upon socioeconomic status, and to erase those racial stereotypes. With some of the correlations in the data that I'm going to bring up today, it really ties into those old biases at first. And we need to understand that, as right there, Dr. Claude Steele did some research. This was found on the APA website, that students, African-American students, when told to take a test, list their ethnicity and told the test was designed to discover the differences in intelligences between Anglo students and African-American students. They did poorer on the test than other African-American students who were told to simply take it and do their best. This just shows a mental roadblock, the stigma bias has been built up within students themselves that affects them on how they do on exams and in the classroom. And that's just part of the truth, is that those stigmas exist, they affect students, and that's a negative impact they have. Talking about some of the statistical strengths of the research I have, there is that truth that there is that bias, and there is a truth that there is a correlation between minority students and how they score in the classroom and on standardized tests. It's a correlation. It doesn't mean it's the best one or the most correct one. And that's what I'm really here to try to disprove and show, that socioeconomic status is the stronger correlation to how students either succeed or fail. That that can overcome, that overshadows the racial analysis of the performance in the classroom, which is just again, as kind of touched on earlier, it doesn't make any sense, and it's impractical but there are numbers to back it up, so some people will stand by it. But again, it doesn't make sense, and we know it's wrong. And this all leads into a logical sequence of when you look at a student's success or failure based upon socioeconomic status, you see that a positive cycle, students from more affluent backgrounds in more affluent schools do better, and then their children will do better, and the cycle continues. The same is true for less affluent students and less affluent communities and schools. This right here is really getting the meat of it. This is some of the real data. This is thanks to the Department of Education in Australia. It's just a graph. It's the only visual representations I have. Although all of the other statistical analysis and research I was able to gather says it's the exact same stuff and conducted the same studies. They just not have it in a graphical format. So understand that when I reference all of the other research, it all says it's the exact same thing. It just said it in words, and I had to summarize it here. And then you know, but this graph has the middle of the socioeconomic status here at 0. That's on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the grade level, as in if they're on par or below. So each grade level of kids in each schools is represented on each dot. So these are schools in Australia, and then by grade level they're represented. So on the y-axis, how far up or down they are. Above 0 is if they are ahead of pace, on pace, or behind. And left to right is how they are socioeconomically in comparison. Socioeconomic status isn't something that we can label. We can't put a number on it. We can't say under this point you are, over this point you aren't. It's all in comparison, which shows that in any country you're going to have, in a richer country like America, you're still going to have the same. You're going to have a low group, a moderate group, and a higher group as it's normally broken up. But that group, those three groups will still be prevalent in, and you list any third world country you'd like to, and they will still be there. They're just going to be more disparities in one area or the other. But it's something that's done by comparison, which is why we just can't label it by how much money either a school has or a household has. Here you can see the trend with this line of best fit, and when the equation of this line, the R squared, is multiplied out to find your Pearson R, that's all stats information for anyone who understands that. It does show a strong enough statistical correlation for this to be true. And so that's just so you understand there is the math behind it that it proves this. But as you can see, again, as money decreases in the school, these are low socioeconomic schools, the grade levels on average drop, same thing as they increase. There will always be outliers. There will be a richer school that does worse and a poorer school that does better in comparison, but it's still under the median and still over the median for this lower school. And again, that's just showing the correlation. There will always be outliers, and there are different effects that then will affect the students in those environments that can be touched upon later. This next graph is the same graph except for where every dot was a school. Now they've taken that dot, so that other dot that was here, and they've put in every student on this graph. So it's going to flatten out it. It's going to flatten out the graph. It's going to change your numerical analysis, but that is simply affected because of the quantity of the data. It still holds the same correlation. It just visually looks a little different and will throw you off. And as you can still see, it has the trend. And then here you really can see the outliers of a student in a lower socioeconomic school performing better, and students in higher socioeconomic schools performing worse. And that, again, comes down to the individual student, and that points out that there are other factors besides just the school that play into how a student does, but it obviously shows that when a school normally is of a low socioeconomic status, the students are going to face troubles and will face more challenges also at home and in the community, which are all controlling factors on how students perform. So more of the support, and again, more of the other data that says the exact same things as those graphs, but I can only find it in written format, is thanks to the United Kingdom, Australia, and obviously the research done in Arkansas by Harding University, Southern Arkansas University, and the University of West Florida. It all correlated the same things, and some of the specific instances. In Arkansas, students were classified as being of low SES if they qualified for free or reduced lunch. I believe that's a very loose classification for being of low SES, especially in America, when at least everyone's getting fed and just all the different things we have being of a richer country. But that itself showed that there was a correlation, that those students performed worse on the end of the year math and English exams in those schools where the study was taking place. And that, again, once just shows the correlation here in our own country. It's not just a problem overseas. Some of the other information, students leaving low socioeconomic schools, so we can assume middle schools because of what the sentence implies. I'm quoting the APA's research on their fact sheet. And entering low socioeconomic high schools, enter high school 3.3 grade levels behind students from higher socioeconomic schools. So they're already 3 grade levels behind. They're entering high school at below a middle school level. And then students who attend the low socioeconomic high schools graduate 4.3 grade levels behind students from higher socioeconomic high schools. So they also learn less while they're in high school and they're graduating at about an 8th grade level, if not lower. I think that just shows a great disparity, a very obvious, well, don't want to say cause and effect, a very obvious reason why the gap is where it is. And the higher dropout rate, students from lower socioeconomic schools have a dropout rate of 16% compared to a rate of 3% for students from higher socioeconomic schools. Once again, just there's a disparity there that can't be overlooked, and it points right to socioeconomic status. Some of the challenges and trends that these students face and the things that they run into that really make it challenging are the family and the community and the schools. When those are of low socioeconomic status, when you're from a lower socioeconomic household, it may be a single parent household, it may not be, your parents may just be busy, don't have time to do homework with you. You may have to work, if you're in high school, you may have to take care of younger brothers and siblings, or a number of things. If you're from a low socioeconomic community, we can assume there are students there who have struggled, have graduated grade levels behind, have dropped out. You don't have a lot of good role models around to encourage you, regardless. And then obviously some of the struggles of low socioeconomic schools are just a lack of facilities, lack of qualified teachers. Your teachers, the more qualified teachers will do well, and then you'll migrate out to better paying jobs in better paying parts of town. So all of those things really add up and kind of lead to this emotional and psychological stress, something that the APA obviously had a real interest in studying, and found that students from low socioeconomic households were twice as likely to have academic-related behavioral problems in school, and to also suffer from clinical depression and stress. And again, that's a serious form. It's not just, oh, life's busy. It's not just, oh, I have to shop at a thrift store. It is, serious problems that these children face, and face on a daily basis, and it's real world to them. It's something that really, truly affects them. It was also found that high school dropouts, we were talking about the cycle, your grade level's behind, you have a higher rate of dropping out. They found that high school dropouts are unemployed at a rate of 76% compared to students from higher socioeconomic schools who didn't drop out. And then a person's incarcerated, only 75% do not have high school diplomas. So once again, it just shows a direct correlation between having a hard time in school, facing struggles because of socioeconomic issues, and then all of the problems that you then face and fall into because of that, that you had no control over to begin with as a student from a low socioeconomic environment. Something I should have touched on earlier, being from a low socioeconomic environment can mean you're either from a low socioeconomic household, attend a low socioeconomic school, or live in a low socioeconomic community. Any one of those three can affect them. Very rarely is a student simply faced with one of those. It normally is all three. The only oddball out would be they're in a higher socioeconomic family, living in a lower socioeconomic community, and attending a school. But very rarely do schools vary from the community, and very often the families follow that trend of the community they're living in. Some of the implications, some of the things this leads to, and wherever some of the responsibilities lie in regard to all of this, is that a student can only control 1/4 of their future. They can, academically, they can only control what they do. There's a humongous part that educators and parents and the community are responsible for, and they have no control of that. They can't pick their parents, they can't pick where they live, and they can't pick their school, unless through hard work and dedication they can qualify for, a magnet school, whatever it may be. But we already talked about all the challenges that they're facing, all the things holding them back. Again, the whole deck is stacked against them, so this really lays a responsibility on the educators, a responsibility on the teachers, on the parents, and on the community around them. And I think this really comes back to just the old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think that's something we can get back to and we can focus on, is that everyone needs to be involved. And as we'll touch on later, when teachers and parents work together, it's just been statistically proven that students on average improve just from that one part, just when teachers and parents communicate and connect and to help the student. And that is really just some of the implications for stopping the cycle and creating social change that could be enacted and I believe should be enacted. And again, back to my purpose and interest in writing this, I really wanted to inform and hope that that would fire up some people and get some people in passion to do more research and just, if nothing else, people be aware of it so when they walk into a classroom, when they're tutoring, when they're subbing, when they just hear about a kid having a hard time, they have a better understanding of some of the challenges that student may or may not be facing, and understand that when you hear stats in the news about how states are doing or how cities compare to rural areas. But even with that being said, there are a couple things I believe we can agree on, and some of that was already touched upon, that the APA's research and the Educational Development Laboratory both found that parents and teachers working together help the student, and that collaboration benefited the student in a positive way, both in a psychological manner where you're reducing that stress and that tension, and also in the classroom in their specific success in the classroom. This book of publication right here, A New Wave of Evidence, is a very useful publication and has a lot of those answers and solutions. And their purpose with that is really working towards the future and hoping to change things. So that is a good resource if you're looking for one. And really trying to enact that social change again that I touched upon earlier. That it needs to happen to correct this correlation and stop that cycle of students facing these troubles, not being able to overcome them, falling back into the cycle, and then their children having the same struggles. To close with, there are really two quotes I like. One's Mark Twain. This really applies to the teachers and back to the implications and their responsibilities. And that he says, "I've never let my schooling interfere with my education." He's never let how much he's learned stop him from learning. And that's, again, I really want to inform educators, inform everyone. And that's the concept of this, so I hope educators will pay attention. And then coming up to the close of it, and that, as bad as it is, and we're not going to change the world in one day, even though I am young and naive and think I'm going to and I want to. Henry Adams' great quote, it says, "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops." I just really think that is so true, and that teachers can go out every day, and you should be encouraged to go out every day and work their best, because they never know where their influence stops. They never know how they may help that 25% that stays out of prison to succeeding, and then finding the answer to turning this all around and stopping the cycle. So I hope those teachers continue fighting. Thank you.
We've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Kim,
Yes, here's one right here.
So, talking about stigmas and stereotypes and testing, what do you see as some of the problems in the system of testing that we have now?
I can only reference what I know. I'm from Washington, D.C. and Maryland, so we use the Stanford testing system. It's the SAT, but just per grade level. And I actually like that. I think it works a lot better. Like the Australian graph, it does them by grade level. So even a 6th grader can score at a 12th grade level. I think mainly with testing, it simply shows all of the other, it shows the result of these students. And then I think mainly with my presentation, I really wanted to show how we're incorrectly interpreting that a lot of the times. And teachers can have a bias that is increased because they keep seeing these scores and you see them correlated to race, or they may not have that bias at all. I've always heard it and think, well, that's stupid, but year after year they keep seeing it, and again, without any more information, well, what else are they to think? They're intelligent people, and they see the facts, and they can't do anything but stand by it. So I think it is mainly, the standardized testing shows and gives us the statistics that can be so often misinterpreted. Yes?
You hit on a point where you said that, teach these children in the lower qualified or lower schools, that teachers go in there, get experience, and then the good teachers go on and move on to higher paying jobs or to different communities. We spent spring break with kids. They're at the very bottom of this level. We weren't even sure if they were going to get to eat that day. And so what do you think, outside of, because that is going to be a constant problem, is that teachers are going to be going in and out and going to go to more advancing degrees. You want to be able to provide for your family and for your children and a better life for them. So outside of the teachers in the schools, because it will be rotating, what do you see as a solution for as a community to help these students on a level that's going to help them advance or stop being a statistic?
Well, and as a community, that comes to all kinds of social work issues and social change issues. but that can be attacked on so many fronts. I mean, charity groups being interactive, churches being interactive, something I think, as a Christian, I think we very little do enough local outreach. I think that's something that could be boosted. So all of those types of issues, people simply working for the community and for volunteering their time and trying to help out students. And I know my mom, she didn't do it until a couple years ago, and she's 56, and she just reads with some 6th graders. And again, she has no frame of reference to them. She can't understand what's cool and what's not. But they just know that there's this random lady who they don't know who wants to come and help them learn how to read. And as much as, I was homeschooled, and I love my mom to death, but she knew nothing about teaching. But she just gave us books and tried to teach us how to read and how to learn. And, I found myself here somehow. Just that they know that she cares is really what matters. So I feel that is really what a community can do, is when you know that people care, you then know if you're in front of so-and-so's house, it's safe there, because they're actually going to come out and call 911 if something happens. Then that just feeds a positive environment.
Thank you, Andrew.
You need to tell them your papers.
Oh, and I do have papers in the back. I was going to say that at the beginning. I would feel a lot better if they're all gone when it's over, even though you do not have to read them.
You have 5 minutes to move if you're going to move to a different section.
I left. What time is it?
And you want to be a teacher, so that's good.
There we go. Exactly 20. There we go. You kept us on time. Yeah. Okay.